Sheffield Wednesday are a club that carries a real prestige and are a club of great stature within English football, but they're a club that's drastically underachieved. I think it's fair to say over the last 20, 30 years since the era in the 1990s where they were a very good Premier League side. And I think more recently that's because of Dave Chansiri, the owner, and whereas initially the back end of the 20 sort of last 2/3 of the 23-24 season and the progress made on the pitch last season under Danny Röhl, securing a top half finish, I think it was enjoyable to watch on the pitch because you watched a team that did have a clear playing identity, that did look very well coached, and would have had some positivity around it. But I think all of that sort of semi-optimism, if you like, for what we're seeing on the field, has kind of been underpinned, or what's the word? Overshadowed slightly by concerns about matters off the field, the lack of trust in owner Dave Chansiri, the feeling that things could blow up at any moment while he's still Sheffield Wednesday owner. And unfortunately, that's those sort of concerns at the back of the minds of Wednesdayites have kind of come home to roost really this summer, because there's been unpaid wages, both of players and of staff. There's been reports that the club's been held hostage by Dave Chansiri, and head coach Danny Röhl has been AWOL and has actually faced some criticism for his handling of the situation as well. Recently, we've seen some change on both counts, partly in Dave Chansiri's position with regards to selling the club and being a bit more open, having previously, I think when I spoke to Wednesdayites, the story was that he was only going to sell for 9 figures, which was completely unrealistic. And it looks like it's a bit different now, and it looks like something might be in the offing, depending on what the state of play is. Meanwhile, on the pitch, head coach Danny Röhl has returned, but more out of contractual obligation and a sort of game of call my bluff, if you like, which probably hasn't helped things either, with it looking like Henrik Pedersen being likely to take the team come the opening day of the season. So a lot to talk about, and that's before you get onto the squad. So this is the Sheffield Wednesday Summer Deep Dive. Yes, welcome along to EFL Debate. I'm speaking to a fan of each of the 72 clubs across the EFL between mid-June and mid-July. So if you want more of that content, you could do us a massive favour by getting subscribed to us on the YouTube and on Spotify. Delighted to be joined this afternoon by James Mappin from the excellent Wednesday Till I Die podcast. James, thanks so much for joining us this afternoon and taking some time out of your day. Yeah. What is the likelihood of a takeover happening at Sheffield Wednesday this summer?
Yeah, if you asked me the question yesterday, then yes, I would have said that we're closer to a deal than we are the day before. Like I said, landscape is changing rapidly all the time, and it's come out today that there's actually someone that's maybe have had a bid accept, and now we all know that doesn't mean that the club is going to be sold. There's all the other things that kind of have to happen. Apparently, there's 3 very interested parties that are looking at Sheffield Wednesday, and we are a club that has great potential. Really, it's just sad that it's got to this point, really, Gab, that we've got to a few weeks before the start of the season, and we don't have any sort of preparation whatsoever going into the next season. We've got players that have not been paid, more importantly staff that haven't been paid either, and the club's just seemingly been run into the ground. And like I said, we could have avoided all of this. To answer your question, are they going to be sold in the summer? I'm under no illusions that this process does take a while. And I think as well, the damage has been done to us. We just don't want to get this over and done with now. I think most Sheffield Wednesday fans have kind of written this season off before it's even started, to be fair. We're just crossing his fingers that something does get done, and we can just move on from this episode that we're in.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't know how much this matters in a way, but how do Wednesdayites view Dave Chansiri in terms of the intentions? Because it's clear that he's done a lot of damage to the football club by the way that he's run the club. I think we can all agree on that. Do you look at it as somebody who's had this intention to cause some of the damage that he has, or do you think that maybe there's been a degree of genuine naivety in how he's run the club, and just I suppose stubbornness in how he's run things?
Yeah, I mean, he's never listened to anyone throughout the whole 10 years that he's been at the football club. You know, when he first came in, there were people in you know, the footballing positions, as people say, you know, the CEOs and stuff. And he had there was a 3 people that were advising him, and they soon fell by the wayside quite quickly. There's been other people as well that have had a, you know, similar sort of ending. And you know, it comes down to him being the common denominator, and not really listening to anyone really, other than Amadou Paxao, who seems to be his the man that he takes most of his advice from, which I don't think he should take any advice from him whatsoever, quite frankly. But I honestly have no idea. I don't know why that we've got into this situation, and why he's allowed it to get into this situation, because, you know, he constantly tells us of how much money he's having to put into the football club. You know, the club on the last accounts was losing around about £9 million. He says it has to put £2 million in every month. You know, if you just walked away, you'd be far better off than what you would be if you still you know, still own the football club. So I really, the question of why does Desmond Chansiri continue to own the football club is one that's gone unanswered and to be fair, actually, it's not been asked enough, if I'm being perfectly honest. And yeah, you just wonder, why would someone do this to Sheffield Wednesday Football Club? He said that he loves the club and he doesn't want to cause any harm. And well, in the past 6 months or so, he's done a great deal of harm. You know, the fact that we can't now pay a fee for a player up until January 2027 is just absolutely ridiculous. Like I mentioned, players not being paid, wages not being paid. We're the only club ever to have been given 3 transfer embargoes all at the same time. That's for not paying the wages, as I've mentioned, not paying HMRC either, and then also, which came out fairly recently, not paying other clubs, which is Southampton for the Shea Charles loan, and then also Akin Famewo, a player that we signed 3 years ago and is now out of contract and has now left. So it is, and there's apparently more clubs as well. So he surely he would have seen that this was going to happen. You know, any business looks at cash flow. He would have predicted that he would be running out of money quickly. But it just shows how hand to mouth he's been running for many, many years. And yeah, it's clearly his money's run out, but he's digging his heels in. And we're just Sheffield Wednesday fans now. I think apathy is as well and truly set in, and we're clinging on to any sort of hope. You know, it was reported last Saturday that he's going to get a broker in to actually sell the football club or help him sell the club. Previously, he was saying that he doesn't want to sign an NDA. For those who don't know, a non-disclosure agreement, which is common practice when selling any sort of business. He said that he didn't sign one when he bought the club off Milan Mandaric, so he didn't want to do the same. But now he's agreed to sell the club in the normal way, and us as Wednesday fans are getting really excited about it. Like, this is just normal, common practice. You shouldn't get excited about someone just being normal, but that's where we are in this situation. We're just clinging on to every little bit of hope that comes our way.
Yeah, I would be very relieved if it was a broker who did the sale of the club, and Chansiri wasn't involved, because you always feel like Chansiri is going to meddle with something or change something and throw a spanner in the works, because he just seems to run things in a very chaotic way. And then I suppose we do have to talk about the wages not having been paid. And I think for footballers, that's it's a disgrace that the footballers haven't been paid. I'm also possibly slightly more worried about the people at the club on a day-to-day basis, in the staff, and people who maybe don't have the same sort of financial advantage as some of the footballers, and what sort of situation they've been put in.
Yeah, exactly. Like, just on the staff first and foremost. Yeah, if I didn't get paid, I'm going to be struggling for the upcoming month. Now, obviously, this happened last month. They eventually did get paid. By all accounts, as well, there was some sort of emergency funding that they could tap into. So I sincerely hope that everyone did that, and they weren't troubled in any sort of way. They got an email the day before payday this time around to say that they're not going to get paid, and also that this emergency funding that they used last time, there's not enough to to go around everyone. So that's obviously quite worrying. We're now, 11 days into the month. The reports are that they still haven't been paid either. So again, I do hope that everyone is all okay. But they're the heartbeat of the football club. The people that work behind the scenes. They're the the unsung heroes, so to speak, that keep the football club running. And for some people as well, that this could be their dream job. Imagine working at a football club that you've supported for the whole of your life, rubbing shoulders with the players on a daily basis, chatting to them constantly, and then all of a sudden, I mean, some of them I've heard have had to find other jobs, and you can probably guess that them jobs will be replaced with someone else, and then that person now is out of that job that they loved for however many years as well, which is really, really sad. And yeah, when you move on to the players as well, just all that trust is just gone. And yes, like you said, they should have some money in reserve, and they're not going to perhaps face the same troubles as others, and that money will get paid, I'm sure, at some point. But they're not going to be focused on the job in hand. All they're going to be thinking about is either moving or when am I going to get paid. They're not really going to be be preparing for next season as best they possibly can. And obviously, I don't know if you're aware, but the FIFA regulations state that if you don't get paid 2 months consecutively, which has passed for some of the players, they can walk away from the contract. So they have to give 15 days notice. We are in that. I think Tuesday maybe Wednesday next week is when the 15 days are up. Apparently 6 players have handed the notice in, one being Josh Windass. We don't know who the other 5 are, but yeah, 6 players have kind of called it a day, and they want to leave and terminate the contract and move on. And I don't blame them, to be fair. Like, I really don't. Next season, or this season coming up, is going to be a real struggle. You could argue, well, they need to be there to fight, but actually, how fun is it going to be? And if they can move on and go elsewhere, then I don't blame them at all.
Yeah, absolutely. In terms of how Danny Röhl has handled all this, I'm always very wary instinctively, James, when a head coach gets blamed, I suppose, around issues that are much bigger in terms of the football club and go way above them. Because I think sometimes when an owner isn't listening, it can be very tempting for fans who have a lot of anger to kind of maybe vent it at somebody else because they're sick of blaming the same person, even if it is the same person who is responsible. But there is also a genuine feeling that Danny Röhl hasn't handled this situation as respectively to Sheffield Wednesday as perhaps he might have done.
Yeah, exactly. You've hit the nail on the head there. That's exactly what I was going to say. Like, he could have dealt with this situation a hell of a lot better. It all goes back to kind of December, really, of last year, but it was announced in January, or revealed by the chairman, that Southampton had actually expressed interest in Danny Röhl. They'd sacked Russell Martin. By all accounts, they'd approached Sheffield Wednesday for Danny Röhl, but he got a big compensation fee slapped on him, so to the tune of around about 5 million, which is said to be reported. That put Southampton off, and then they then went away. And obviously, you look at the way that we performed in the new year, and a lot of fans now think that Danny Röhl's down tools somewhat. That some of the messaging, like in the post-match press conferences and stuff, were a little bit suggestive. We're calling out the chairman on a number of occasions. We didn't sign anyone in January until really late. They'd not even spoken for quite some time as well, which didn't help proceedings. And there was a bit of a Mexican standoff, I guess, and that's kind of continued, really. The season finishes. Mid-table finish, a bit of a lackluster ending, and then he goes away. Goes back to Germany, which fully entitled to do, back to his family, and then he's been in various media outlets. He's done a podcast. He's done interviews with some German media, and this is where I think some people have probably taken it a little bit out of context. when you're in an interview, he's only answering the questions. You know, he got asked if he wants to manage in the Bundesliga. He said, yes, of course, it's a dream of mine. And it, you know, comes across as ambitious. I think he referred to us as, in the past tense a little bit sometimes, which obviously doesn't go down too well. But then also I get the fact that he just didn't have to do these interviews either. Like, there was nothing saying that he had to do them. He could have just, he could have just not answered the question, or he could have just, just not agreed to do them in the first place, which I suppose maybe shows a little bit of naivety. Maybe he does want to leave as well, and I'm sure he does want to progress things, and especially when you look at the situation now. But I also think, you know, it's difficult when you don't hear both sides of the story. Was he promised things in January? Was he promised a budget? I mean, he's not going to get any budget now at all because we're in a transfer embargo. So, there's all those things, and the fan base has turned on him. A lot of people, think that he's a snake and things like that. I did put a poll out the other day because obviously the news that he was going to return, which I'm sure we'll get onto in a second, and 70% of fans said they were welcoming him back, but it doesn't feel like that. The mood doesn't feel like that, and the players seemingly don't want him back either.
Yeah, what can you check? I heard there was some sort of dispute with Barry Bannon, and I think if I was to pick players that I wanted to be in conflict with as a Sheffield Wednesday manager, Barry Bannon would be right at the bottom of that list because he has so much influence around the club, doesn't he?
Yeah, of course he does, and that's obviously the news came out the other day that Danny Röhl is going to do a U-turn and he's going to return. Obviously, he'd not come back for pre-season training. We're kind of 2.5 weeks into pre-season now. I mean, you call it pre-season, but they were training from home last week. We've got 2 behind closed doors pre-season friendlies. Nothing else has been announced. It is a very, they're at St George's Park at the moment for a week, but kind of pointless really given the skeleton squad that we've got. But yeah, we had the under-21s manager taking training on Monday. Then Henrik Pedersen, who was Danny's assistant for the time that Danny's been here, who was out of contract, he was drafted in. He signed a new contract to be the assistant. And then, a day or two later, Danny Röhl gets announced as he's coming back now. Not announced officially by the club. This was through BBC Radio Sheffield saying that he's going to return. We haven't seen any pictures of him. This is like 2 days after now, so I don't know if he has returned to training or not. But yeah, there's also whispers from the squad that they don't want him back anymore, which is mental because they were, certainly Barry Bannon and Josh Windass have come out openly and said that Danny Röhl is one of the best coaches that they've had. Now, I know it's easy to say that when he's the manager and you're the player of that club. Sometimes it is just lip service, but also that's quite a big statement to make. So something has obviously happened. Well, he hasn't turned up for starters. So whether they feel betrayed by him or not, or they feel angered by what he's done, but again, it's not great preparation for the new season. But as you kind of alluded to in your introduction, I don't think Danny Röhl is coming back. I am not putting any money on him being in the dugout come the first game of the season. I feel like, initially I was really excited. I thought, great news. We've got a manager, we've got an assistant. At least we can actually do it. There's a bit of continuity there moving forward. And then when I thought about it a bit more, you're thinking, well, he obviously wants out of his contract. They've been negotiating an exit. Then an assistant gets announced, and then he just comes out and says, yeah, I'm coming back as well. It's almost like it's for legal reasons more than actually him coming back to take training.
Here's where I do have a degree of sympathy for Danny Röhl. I think it would have been simpler from a footballing point of view, James, if Danny Röhl had resigned when his wages weren't paid. Because I think, managers can do that. But from Sheffield Wednesday's point of view, and certainly from Chancery's, it would have been better for him for another club to have poached him and hit that £5 million threshold, which would have helped some of the financial issues. That hasn't happened, and it seems to have just given way to this situation that nobody really wants.
Yeah, and just for people that don't know as well, if a manager just walks away from his contract, they're liable to pay some sort of compensation to the club as well. So, normally what happens is mutual termination of the contract, which I thought should have happened really at the end of last season. It's clear that the relationship between the two had broken down. Yes, a compensation package works when the manager is doing well, but since January, the form kind of dropped off somewhat. Had we have got a centre back, and had we got a striker, and had we finished either in the playoffs or just outside, maybe Southampton might have come calling for Danny Röhl because they'd seen that, but obviously when it's quite public knowledge that relationship had broken down, all the other clubs are just going to wait until the inevitable happens and the manager gets sacked, which was what would normally happen in any other case. Obviously, we are not any normal case, so Chansiri, clearly now when you look at the finances, clearly he was banking on the fact of getting some money for Danny Röhl. He saw that as a way of, well, the club existing, I guess, really, and that never came. And really should have just cut his losses and got rid of him. But clearly he can't afford to do that. And now, he is a very proud man, Dejphon Chansiri, and I feel like that's hurting him in some way. He clearly, perhaps doesn't respect Danny Röhl anymore, and he's, I don't know, trying to prove a point or something. But all it's doing is causing a mess, and the ones that kind of lose out are us as fans, and I suppose the players as well, because they're just left in limbo at the moment. And the whole situation could have been dealt with much, much easier. And at other clubs, you don't see this sort of standoff, and it's just getting a little bit of a joke now. And but I suppose it's what we've come to expect under Chansiri's reign. Nothing is never easy.
Yeah, absolutely. I think my personal perspective is that I think Röhl hasn't handled things as well as he could have done. I think he should have said, while I'm Sheffield Wednesday manager, I'm going to give everything to this football club. That's how I think he probably should have handled it. And if I'm approached by another club, then that's a different conversation. But I also think that it's all stemmed from Chansiri, and he's fundamentally created these issues. So definitely need to take over. That's for sure. Let's have a look at the squad then at the moment, because you do still have a lot of players under contract, providing you can honour them. Where are we with Pierce Charles's development after being often an understudy to James Beadle for much of last season?
Well, he's the only goalkeeper we've got at the moment, Gab. So he will be number one come first game of the season. But I mean, look, I hope he's someone that we hold on to. Jeddy Kasama is reportedly got off to Rangers, but that's kind of stalled somewhat. So we'll see what happens there. Anthony Masaba is off to Turkey. So clearly there's a bit of a fire sale going on at the moment with some of the assets that we've got. I just really hope that Pierce Charles isn't another one that gets sold as well, because he is a shining light at the moment. Last season, he should have gone out on loan, really, but injury to Ben Hamer at the start of the season probably meant that couldn't happen, and he had to bide his time. He played in the cup games where he did okay. Then he got his debut in the Northern Ireland senior national side, so playing with his brother as well, Shea, who obviously we had on loan last season, and he played some fantastic football. They had more games for Northern Ireland than he had for Sheffield Wednesday for his own club side, which is mad. But he comes from the Man City academy originally. He's only young. He's 19 years old, so only just turned 19 fairly recently. But he's one that is a modern goalkeeper, one that will spray the ball out from the back. He'll go short. He can go long as well. A fantastic range of passing. He'd look comfortable in the middle of the park, to be fair. He does look a little bit small, I'm not going to lie. He's a little bit deceiving, but he more than makes up for that with his other abilities as well. And yeah, he's one that I'm really excited for this season. Like I say, he got his chance at the back end of last season. James Beadle made a couple of mistakes. So, Pierce Charles came in and did no wrong, really. I mean, in a defence that was leaking a lot of goals, but I don't think there were many goals that you could attribute to him, and I think he's he's done himself proud, and he's a goalkeeper that I think can go very far as well. And I just don't want him to be sold right now for a cut down price just to keep the lights on at Hillsborough. And he's an asset, and he's someone that we need to keep. And I'm sure he will move on at some point. But I'm very. I mean, the season's going to be bad anyway. It's probably the wrong time. If you're his agent, you're probably thinking that you need to get a move out of Sheffield Wednesday, really. But I would, I'd love to keep him.
Yeah, I think it's one of those where the situation dictates that maybe you just need to raise some capital between now and when the takeover happens, just to keep the lights on and pay the staff and just stabilize things, and then you might dip into the loan market for a goalkeeper. If that's what needs to happen, of course you don't want that to happen. Of course you'd want to try and build around Pierce Charles, but sometimes you're not in a position to choose, and I think this might be one of those situations.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm wondering about Jan Valery, James. What kind of season did he have last year?
A bit in and out. I thought that he when he came in, he looked quite composed. He's playing at right back. He'd either he did slot in in the right of a three when we did play a back five. We did have defensive issues last season as well, which didn't really help. But very comfortable, like I said, at right back. Comfortable going forward. Not, the end product, like most of our players last season, wasn't always there. But I thought he looked really solid. He wasn't a player that kind of lit things up. He wasn't one that I've got that excited about, but he certainly came in and did a job and was better than Paul Valentin, who was the other player in that position. So again, I think when we talked about some of the defenders last season, like I said, we conceded a lot of goals, but we also had a lot of different players playing back there. We had a lot of injuries, which didn't help. Certainly the centre-back pairing seemed to change pretty much every single week. We had Michael Ahekwe, or we had Dishon Bernard, or then we had Dom Iofa playing there, Jan Valery, even Max Lowe, who plays on the opposite side, who were brought in as a left-back. He played the majority of the season as a centre-back as well. So, yeah, it was difficult. But, yeah, Jan Valery, not one that got me too excited, but certainly a solid player. He's rumoured to be one of those that has handed his notice in, but obviously I can't confirm that. But his name has been put out there as one of those. So we'll have to see what happens with him.
Yeah, for sure. I suppose that's going to be a lot of a caveat for a lot of these, isn't it?
Yeah.
In terms of Liam Palmer, then, James, is he somebody who it feels a bit more how should I put this? The fact that he's obviously it's a job to him, of course, like it is for anyone, but he's represented Sheffield Wednesday for I think 15 years now, something along those lines. So clearly he's going to feel a strong sense of loyalty to the club, and he's going to want to fight for Sheffield Wednesday, even if there is a few, you might miss a couple of months of payment. He's happy to carry on fighting, I guess.
Yeah, he bleeds blue and white. He's played, over 400 games for Sheffield Wednesday. He is, he's a true modern Wednesday legend. He's been there through everything. You're right. He joined or made his debut in 2010. He's nearly a one club man, but he did go out on loan to Tranmere early on in his career, so he can't quite say that. But he's been there through everything. Obviously, in our League One days way back when, then also kind of in the Championship, nearly getting to the Premier League. Then he's been back into League One. He's seen it all. He's been obviously the last 10 years have been under the owner of Dejphon Chansiri, but he's had. He, like I said, he's one of the very few to have seen everything at Sheffield Wednesday, and yeah, I feel like no disrespect to Liam Palmer, I was hoping that this perhaps we won't be seeing much of him this season. However, with how things have gone, I think we might be seeing more of Liam Palmer than we might have thought, really, just by virtue of us not really having much else. So, we haven't really got any sort of bargaining power to bring anyone in really at the moment. So yeah, he's a solid player. He's been a solid servant. I feel like he's one of those players that is just a solid 7 out of 10 every single week. He doesn't really have any shockers. He doesn't really, have any, 10 out of 10 performances, but he's one that you can just really depend on. Like I said, some of his performances last season were a little bit shaky, but he can play play right back. He can play, in that defensive midfielder role. He's even stepped up in at centre back at times as well. So we'll have to see where he's going to be used. But like I said, he's an absolute Wednesday legend, a great guy. Does a lot for charity as well. He's got his little academy that he runs. So he loves working with the kids and actually bringing the kids through, which is just an excellent guy, really, all round good guy.
Absolutely need more people like Liam Palmer there, that's for sure. I'm wondering, in terms of central defence, James, Deschamps Bernard, I think is another, a bit like Jan Valery, possibly a bit of an asset that that other clubs could be looking at, and you might get a few quid for him.
Yeah, I mean, he came from the Man United academy, got released, and we picked him up. He's in his this will be his third season with us now, but he is injured at the moment. He picked up an injury against West Brom. I think it was his a knee injury that he picked up. I don't know if it was his ACL or not, but whichever way, it was a big injury, and he's not going to be fit for the start of the season either. So we've not seen him in any of the pictures in training, although the pictures have been limited. Let's just say, given the circumstances. But it was said that he's probably going to be September when he's going to be fit. So whilst he's one that could perhaps move on, given his injury, I can't really see that really happening at the moment, which could be a little bit of a blessing in disguise, I guess, which means we can keep him, but we will be missing him, at the start of the season. It's a tricky one for him as well, because he set off when he first came to us, fantastic player, really composed on the ball, can carry the ball out of defence and get you those extra, 20, 30, 40 yards, down the pitch. But then just before his injury, he did make a few mistakes. He got a couple of red cards. The one against Stoke was two stupid yellow cards that he picked up just for dragging the attacker down. And no need to do it whatsoever. I mean, we did end up going on to win that game with 10 men, but still, you don't want to pick up red cards like that. I think then that was his second red card of the season, so he got a 3-match ban, even though it was only a double, two yellows. And then when he came back from that suspension, he just didn't look the player that we'd seen before. So it's going to be very interesting to see how he is when he comes back from this injury. Some players can pick up where they've left off. Some of us injuries can obviously affect them more. So I hope it is the former rather than the latter, because we're certainly going to need someone like him.
Yeah, for sure. You've also got Dom Iorfa there, who I must say I've tended to find him. He's got some raw ingredients, but you also look at Dom Iorfa sometimes and think there can be a bit of a mistake. But at the same time, I also feel that anyone who continues to play for Sheffield Wednesday amid some of the challenges that the club's faced, that players shouldn't have to deal with, will kind of have my respect. So I almost feel like it's harder to be as critical, I suppose, in these situations, isn't it, of players when you know what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, Dom's been here for a while. He signed in 2019, so we're into kind of sixth season at Wednesday now. And you're right. He can look good, and then he can have an absolute shocker in him as well. And he's had a couple of those, in the past couple of years as well, which just doesn't. It's not great. You don't want that from a centre back. I mean, I think when we saw the best of him is when there was the Championship season when we got relegated. When we were kind of on the back foot, he has got a turn of pace. He's a tall lad, and he's got long legs, and he uses them to his advantage. When you are on the back foot and he's kind of gets caught out a little bit, it doesn't take him long to catch up, and he'll nick the ball off the attacker. Whereas when we're kind of dominating games a bit more, which hasn't happened a great deal, admittedly, but when we have been kind of on the front foot, he doesn't seem to read the game very well, which is probably why he uses his pace to his advantage. But when you come up against some of the better sides, he does get come unstuck somewhat. So he's one that he's a great squad player. I was hoping for a lot more of him. I mean, there was a time, I think it was a couple of years back, where he had a really terrible start to the season, and you were thinking you need to drop him. But he didn't get dropped. He's have a fight or flight, and he did come through and did play well. But yeah, I think he's one that Yeah, again, like all of them, like we're struggling for players. I know you said we've still got like quite a few players under contract, but we haven't got much else. We're not going to have much of a strength in depth. So all these players that you're talking about really need to step up this season.
Yeah, certainly do. Bayo's come through the under 21s. Are we looking at somebody who could come into the first team squad in what's likely to be quite a skeletal senior squad due to the situation?
Yeah, well, as I mentioned, Deshaun Bernard's injured, so Bayo probably will get a start. To be honest, we have still got Max Lowe, but we haven't got Marvin Johnson anymore on the left, so it's going to be Max Lowe out on that side. It'll be probably Bayo alongside Dom Iorfa, and then maybe Jan Valery on the right, because Paul Valentin's left as well. So we are very, very, very short. So yeah, he's definitely going to get his chance, unless we make some signings in the summer, which is very unlikely given the circumstances. But you never know what might happen. But yeah, he's going to get given a chance. He got a few appearances. I think he made 10 appearances last season, mainly off the bench, and he got given a go. He did look a bit, rabbit in headlights at times. I think it was the Middlesbrough game at the Riverside where he started that one and we were 3-0 down at half time, and he ended up getting hooked at half time. We ended up drawing that game 3-3, ironically. So he's, he has got a lot to work on, but again, this is going to be an opportunity for some of the youngsters maybe this season. If there's any kind of positive to take from this whole situation, and trust me, there's not many positives at all, it is that some of these young players will get a chance in the first team to at least show what they can do. And you never know, we might be able to find some diamonds in the rough.
Yeah, absolutely. I suppose one of those potential diamonds is Sean Fasaya, who came through the under 21s. I think he had a loan at Carlisle United last season. Do you think he's one who's going to get his opportunity?
Again, it's difficult with some of these young players, because as a fan, it's very easy to look at the under 21s and say, give him a go. He's scoring goals in the youth football. He's the one that's going to turn our fortunes around. But then we forget that we don't see them every day in, day out, like the manager does, and like the other coaches and things like that. Yeah, I mean, he went to Carlisle, a bit of a baptism of fire. They got relegated. He went into a poor side, and I think it's always probably difficult, when you are getting just beat every single week. It's not a great environment to be in. But I heard some decent things from him, to be fair. And yeah, again, we haven't seen a great deal of him. I think he played a few cup games for us last season, which he did okay in the middle of the park and didn't really light it up. But yeah, he's one that we're going to need something from him, and the pronunciation is Fashira, I've been told, as well. So okay. Doesn't look anything like that whatsoever. So it's going to be a commentator's nightmare. But Fashira is how you pronounce it.
Okay, nice. So left back, then you've got Max Lowe. What did you make of his season last year? Obviously, spent much of it at centre half because of the injuries in central defence.
Yeah, we were sceptical, not just because he came from those down the road, but mainly by what people had said about him, to be honest, which is a little bit unfair on a player. I think obviously when you do leave a club, they're probably not going to give you as much of a glowing review, and I suppose they get released for a reason. But I thought that a lot of fans would say that they were quite pleasantly surprised, really, with some of the performances that he put in. I don't think he was expected to play as much football as he did, and then he did pick up an injury, later in the season, probably down to the fact with the amount of games that he ended up having to play. I think he was probably going to come in and be a bit of a rotation with Marvin Johnson last season, but that never happened. Not because of those, because of the issues at centre back that we had, and he had to slot in there, and he was fantastic. Again, not amazing, but he isn't a centre back, so you do have to kind of lower your expectations a little bit. But yeah, I think most fans were pleasantly surprised at how he played. Looked very composed on the ball. Didn't really make too many mistakes, which I suppose really is when you're in defence, that's one of the main things. Don't make any mistakes, and he did that, and he was fairly good in the air, given he's not exactly the tallest of blokes, but no, he did a good job when he was needed, and I just hope that he gets to play out at left back a little bit more this season.
Yeah, I hope so, because I think when I've seen him at left back, he's got that ability to can tuck into a back three if Jan Valery flies forward, but he can also, you know how Real likes to play with a sort of five-man attack in possession. Sometimes Maxwell was quite good at getting forward and allowing JD Kisama to cut inside. So I think from that point of view, yeah, I think he's got that flexibility about him. So central midfield then, James. We've mentioned Sean Fashira. You've also got Nathaniel Chalobah in there and Svante Ingolson as well. Ingolson obviously stepping up from one of the leagues abroad that was one of the lower levels, I think. How do you feel he fared in his first season?
He blew hot and cold, somewhat, to be honest. He had some great games. Coventry away was one of them, where he kind of played in a front three and did really well. Went on to win that game. He played fantastic in the opening game of the season against Plymouth, as did everyone really. And we looked at him there and we thought we've signed a real player, but he just didn't quite live up to that potential, or live up to that performance of that first game of the season. To be honest, he was in and out of the side, which I think that was down to his performances more than anything else. Not really, proving to Danny Brill that he could, cement that position in the starting 11. And I think the word to use is underwhelming. I think really. Like I said, he probably set the bar far too high for himself in that opening game of the season, as did many of them. To be fair, when you looked at that 4-0 win. But yeah, he was. I expected a little bit more of him. I wasn't quite sure of where he was going to play, because when you look at where he has played previously in his other clubs, he'd been thrown out wide left. And when we first signed him, you're looking and you're thinking, wait a minute, we're stacked in the wide areas. Why are we signing another winger? But he kind of played more central. And yeah, I'm not really sure what his best position is, because as I mentioned in that game against Coventry, we kind of played a front three and he got stuck out there. So he's still got a lot more to prove, I think, but he didn't, like I said, he didn't play a full season. We haven't seen that much of him really, but what we did see of him was okay. But yeah, blew hot and cold really.
Yeah, hot and cold, Svante Ingolson. So curious to see whether he can build on that first campaign. Nathaniel Chalobah, I think, is somebody who's now vastly experienced at championship level, and I suppose he'd be one player that you would look at and think, can we rely on him as one of those more seasoned pros, like for instance a Liam Palmer type? Is that the fit? But he can be a bit of an injury risk as well, can he, Nathaniel Chalobah?
Yes, missed a lot of last season down to injury, which obviously was disappointing. I don't think he made his debut until January, I think. So he didn't feature at all. Which again, yeah, when you sign someone like him, you look at where he's been, and as you mentioned, a lot of championship experience. You're thinking that, yeah, is he going to be the one that was going to be alongside Barry Bannon? When we signed him, we'd not got Shea Charles. He came in, after the season started, probably because of the injury to Nathaniel Chalobah, which obviously worked quite well, to be honest, in the end. But yeah, he's one that, one England cap, by the way, just throwing that one out there. I don't know how he got that, but he has. But yeah, he had some good performances when he came on. I referenced the Middlesbrough game that we came back from 3 goals down. He came on at half time and pretty much ran the show, to be honest, in the middle of the park, as did Ingolson as well. That was another game that he did well at. But yeah, we didn't see too much of him and didn't see enough of him really. He does look very calm on the ball. I think he does use that experience. He can put his foot on the ball, just almost like time stands still when he is on it. It's from like a creativity point of view. I don't really think that's his game, but he can he can hold on to the ball and then feed the wide players or feed that ball through the middle and start an attack going. So yeah, again, another one that, as Ingolson, really needs to stay out of the injuries, but also needs to perhaps step it up a little bit this season.
Yeah, hopefully he can find form and fitness. Number 10 then, Josh Windass. I think after the season he had last year, he's probably somebody who would maybe have his eye on a move. Is that the impression that you get at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, if you want cryptic messages, just follow Josh Windass on Instagram because he is full of them constantly on his stories. Yeah, his deal got extended. We had an option to extend that. I don't think he realised that when he signed the contract, or certainly forgot about it because it was announced by the club. And yeah, some quite funny messages from him on his Instagram page. Saying he's locked in jail and things like that, and hostage, I think was the was the message that he put out there. So yeah, I don't think Josh is a very happy chappy at the moment. He is one of the players that has been reported to have been handed his notice in, which comes as no surprise whatsoever. It is one that from a fan base perspective, it's very weird because he's a player which technically would go as one of, if not the best player at the football club, and has been for quite some time, probably alongside Barry Bannon. He technically very, very good, scored some very, very important goals for us. I mean, namely the one at Wembley against Barnsley in the last minute of extra time, scored a great goal, or a brace against Newcastle when we beat them, scored a fantastic goal against Blackburn, scored from his own half against Derby as well. I could list many, many goals that Josh Windass has scored. But yet, from a fan base perspective, there was the whole, I think his dad said that you don't celebrate goals in League One, of which he then went on to not celebrate many goals that he'd scored in League One, and he doesn't really, he doesn't show that passion and stuff that perhaps a Will Volks or a George Byers, or if you go back even further, Jose Semedo when we had him, quite some time ago, someone that kind of really gets the football club and kisses the badge and pumps his chest and things like that. Callum Patterson is another prime example. Yeah. Give everything for the shirt. He isn't one like that. So he doesn't really get the fans on board, and he's made certain comments in the media as well, which perhaps have put people off. But again, it's mad because, if you'd have said you're going to build a statue of either Callum Patterson or Josh Windass outside, Josh Windass has scored the most goals for Sheffield Wednesday this century. People would pick Callum Patterson just because he, the way that he kind of resonates with the fans over Josh Windass, and it's mad to even think that. But if he does go, Wrexham are reportedly interested in him, and I could see that as definitely a potential move. Either that or to go to the MLS. His now wife is from America, so that would make perfect sense. And he is of that age now. He's over 30 years old. But no, we would miss him. We would certainly miss his goals. When you add that to, I mentioned Callum Patterson, he's not here anymore. He's not signed a new contract. You add them all up. If Gassama and Masaba also leave, they scored quite a few goals. I think you've only got Michael Smith out of the top 5 goal scorers that would still be left. So yeah, we do need to keep hold of him, but it's not looking very likely.
No. So did you say he's out of contract, or he's
no? So Josh Windass. Josh Windass was out of contract, but we had an option to extend, which we triggered. So he has got he's out of contract next summer. So he's got another year left on his deal. But I don't think he's too happy about that.
No, that's the thing. So yeah, hopefully the club can at least get a bit of money for him. So that would definitely help things in the meantime until new ownership comes in. Barry Bannon, then, James. How's Bannon sort of handled the situation? I guess.
Well, he's a volunteer at the moment because he's out of contract and he hasn't signed a new deal yet. So not only is he not being paid, he's not got a new deal, but he's there at St George's Park training with in pre-season. So we predict that he will sign a new deal. I don't know if there's anything to do with the fact that we're under the embargo, that we might not be able to, because there's a rule in that you can only offer players $7,000 a week and only a 1-year deal whilst under the transfer embargo. So that does get lifted, but the players need to be paid. The tax man needs to be paid, and the staff doesn't come in. You're not under embargo for the staff, but it is the other one is the other clubs that are owed money, namely Southampton. So those need to be paid first. So I don't know if that's the case where he's not. I'm guessing he'll be on more than $7,000 a week. So if that is an issue, he'll wait until that gets sorted to then sign his new deal. But no, he's there's been reports that him and Palmer have refused to take any money until the staff have been paid. I've also heard that that's not true. I hope it is true, because that's that will be something that it would make sense. He would do that. He is that type of person to do
Yeah.
that. Loyalty isn't in football anymore, but there's a certain few individuals that do show that loyalty, and he is one of them. You know, for him to stay through thick and thin, a lot of thin, I must admit, but he's stayed with us. Obviously, his wages will help. I'm sure. I'm sure the deal that he's on, and he's settled here. But we love Barry Bannon. I think we don't appreciate him enough at Sheffield Wednesday because he has been here for so long. You know, his kind of 7 or 6 out of 10 performance is probably someone else's 8 or 9.
Yeah.
But we just, we, as a fan base, we can perhaps take him for granted a little bit. I mean, for me personally, if I was him, I'd probably be looking to move. I know that sounds really, really bad, but just from a personal point of view, because I do feel like this season is going to be, it's going to be tough, whichever way you look at it. Potential points deductions, the fact that the squad, is almost decimated. You don't know what sort of quality you're going to have, and it is going to be a struggle. And from a fan's perspective, fans can quite easily turn on a player. We've already seen some of that last season. A misplaced pass, Barry, his legs have gone. That's it. He's finished. And I just don't want his last season with Sheffield Wednesday to be this one, if you know what I mean. What should have happened, he perhaps should have had his send-off at the end of last season, kind of announced 2 or 3 games before the end, and we could have had the big send-off for him and everything else. I just don't want people to remember him for what potentially could be a really poor season in the history, and I don't think he's got that many years left in him. If he's getting on now, so yeah, he's a fantastic player. I mentioned Palmer being a legend. Barry Bannon is another legend as well.
Yeah, I think difficult to say because I know that the finances come first, and certainly paying staff and dealing with all those bills and stabilising off the field is really important. But if it is possible to do a deal for Barry Bannon, the fact that he is sort of volunteering to train when even the head coach of the club isn't volunteering to come into the football club, I think that it shows that he's someone who has a huge amount of passion for Sheffield Wednesday, and I think he does have the ability to try and through his character as well as his ability, on the technical ability, try and carry the club through what's going to be a really difficult season. So I'd hope that it'd be possible to do something, but the financial side comes first. In terms of the wingers then, James, you've got Jody Gassama's been linked with a move. Would you hope that the money coming in for him would help sort of stabilise things a little bit?
Do you know what? Normally, when we don't sell footballers, like under Chansiri, we do not sell anyone. Lucas Joao, I think, was the last player that we sold, and that was many, many years ago. And I think Steve Bruce actually goes down as our biggest transfer sale. And he was a manager who just left by his own accord. I think it was the compensation we got for him, which just shows you how we don't really move players on. And it is a big criticism. In normal circumstances, I would say, yeah, you move on your assets and then use that money to then reinvest into the squad and bring other youngsters through. And then you kind of try and do what Brentford and Brighton have done quite famously. Like I said, the fact that we're just selling these players to keep the lights on is just a real worry, really, because you're not really getting anywhere with that. It's reportedly going to be going for 2.5 million, which is a steal, if you ask me. I think he's worth at least double that, to be honest, perhaps even more, given his potential that he's got and where he's come from. He's a bit speedboat, no driver, I must admit. Some of the end product isn't quite there sometimes. 12 goals in 80 games. I'd like to have seen him score perhaps a little bit more, and I think he's only got 7 assists as well, so those numbers need to be better, but he certainly shows a lot of promise. Now, he's reported to be going to Rangers. They are also at St George's Park this week, so he hasn't got far to travel at all, and by all accounts he's passed his medical. Everything's all done and sorted. He's even been pictured unofficially in a Rangers top as well, but Chansiri's digging his heels in, so there is a bit of rumours at the moment as to whether that's because of a potential takeover, because if you're going to be buying a football club, the players are an asset. Whether whoever's buying the club have said, wait a minute, I'm not going to pay that much money. If he goes, And that's kind of happened. I have no idea. I'm not too sure, but they're the rumours at the moment. But yeah, yesterday it looked like he was off to Rangers. Today it looks like we might be keeping him, and I hope we do, because he is worth more than 2.5 million.
Yeah.
He's and certainly next season, if we're going to be, have any slim hope of staying up, we need someone with pace, and he's got bags of pace as well. And yeah, we're certainly better with him than we are without him. Certainly when we can't really sign anyone at the moment. So any player, we do need to keep hold of. But yeah, hopefully we do keep hold of Jeddah.
Absolutely, yeah. With Anthony Musaba, maybe not quite at the same level, although not a million miles off. Do you think that there's going to be interest in him this summer, or do you see him as somebody that's going to stick around?
Well, he's apparently off to Turkey, and he's not. I don't think he's going to have his teeth done. I think he's going to play football over there as well. So, yeah, that's apparently going to get sorted over the weekend. £800,000 is the reported fee for him. Two very similar players, Gassama and Musaba. And when we signed him, I was getting really excited with both of them on each wing, but they didn't really seem to play together, to be honest. It was one or the other, which was a little bit of a shame, because I'd thought that having pace on both wings would kind of terrorise some of the defences that we came up against, but that never happened really. It's a strange one as well. Musaba perhaps started off as the better player out of the two, but then last season kind of tailed off somewhat, and it was Gassama that got chosen ahead of Musaba. But on the eye, you'd pick Jeddah Gassama every day of the week. When you look at the numbers, Anthony Musaba has better numbers in terms of goals and goal involvements than Jeddah Gassama does. So it depends on what you're wanting, I suppose. Really, you want the goals and things. So he's always a confusing one, really. Both very frustrating footballers. When I said speedboat, no driver, you can put Anthony Musaba into that one as well. Looks really good, running at the defence, gets into good positions, and then the end product just isn't there. Whether that's the final shot or the cross or the pass, just not quite composed enough. But you'd like to think it'd come. And Musaba is a little bit older than Gassama, so naturally when you look at potential there, perhaps not going to have as much potential maybe. But yeah, he's not one that I'm too bothered about leaving in normal circumstances. But at the moment, we just need to keep as many as we've got, and it's going to be a shame. He's going to be missed, but yeah, it looks like he's on his way.
Do you think Olaf Kabaki is somebody who could step up in what would be the left wing for Gassama, wouldn't it? Because you signed him last summer, didn't you, from the Polish league?
Yeah, one that we didn't see much of whatsoever at all. He came in, I think he played. I saw him against Grimsby in the Carabao Cup. And then that's pretty much it, really. I'm just looking now. He made 12 appearances, but he didn't really do anything at all for us. He did have an injury, which obviously doesn't help. But yeah, again, when I was talking about Nathaniel Chalabar and Svante Ingelsson, he's another one that will have to step up, especially if Jeddah Gassama isn't here and he does actually leave. So, I mean, even if he is here, still he's part of the squad, and we are going to be needing all of the squad this season. The games come thick and fast, don't they? So yeah, we haven't seen anything of him really, so it'd be difficult for me to comment, and I can't really look back on the Polish second tier because YouTube is good, but it's not got many clips of Olaf Kabacki.
No. So in terms of the attacking options then, James, you seem to have 5 strikers and none of them are great in terms of current ability. Yeah, you've got Nathan Lowe, who's more of a versatile forward who can play down the middle, but I wouldn't class him as an out striker necessarily. Ike Ugbo, who's probably not of the required standard. You've got Charlie McNeil, who's signed from Manchester United and still quite a young lad, finding his way in the game. You've got Michael Smith, who I could imagine him going back to MK Dons to work with Paul Warne, maybe. And then you've got Bailey Tai Kadamatari, who's got a lot of potential, but still, I think he might still be a teenager or maybe 20. So, yeah, 5 strikers there, and yet you sort of come out of it with more questions than answers.
Yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head there, to be honest. It's Jamal, though, not Nathan Lowe. Look there, Nathan Lowe does exist, but he plays for... he plays for Stoke.
City, yeah.
Yeah, but no, maybe he might be better than Jamal though, so maybe we can do a swap. No, I think you're right. Like when you look at it, Ike Ugbo, didn't score last season, famously, which was he had a purple patch when he signed the January before on loan, so we signed him on a permanent for $2.5 million, and didn't score one goal whatsoever, which is obviously a great concern. Now, they put that to kind of the pre-season that he had, and or lack of pre-season, but he's not going to get much of a pre-season this time around, is he? Even though he's there, so yeah, he needs to certainly step up with some goals. And I really felt for him last season, to be honest. There was the incident. I forget who it was. It was home game where we had a penalty. Josh Windass got the ball, and Barry Bannon took it off him and gave it to Ike Ugbo, only for him to miss.
I think that might be Millwall in January.
I think you're probably right. Yeah, the game that we then conceded the ridiculous goal mouth scramble late on in injury time. So yeah, I mean, who knows? Like, had he scored that goal, maybe it might have been a bit different, but he didn't, and he looked a broken man, to be honest, and didn't really feature at the end, which was probably for his own good more than anything. So yeah, he certainly needs to step up. Michael Smith, yeah, I didn't think he'd score as many goals as he did. Most of his goals last season came from off the bench. I think he got 8 in total, and I think 5 or 6 of them were from off the bench. Seemed to play well. When he came off the bench, he did all right, and then he'd play the next game and start, and didn't look great. However, in his defence, when he did start, he did tend to start against some of the better opposition, which probably didn't. Went against him a little bit. Scored a wonderful goal against Portsmouth away from home, which could have won the goal of the season, to be honest. Which, if it wasn't for Josh Windass scoring his goal from the halfway line, which didn't win goal of the season in the Championship, by the way, which I think was absolutely absurd. But anyway, yeah, he's going to be valuable with his goals, but again, one that might be leaving. Wrexham had interest in him in January. I don't know whether that interest is still there or not, but he's one that's not getting any younger either, and didn't play many games. I don't know whether that was down to his fitness or not, because he certainly looked a different player when pre-season finished and last time around. But given that we've lost goals in other areas, we might be looking to him. But yeah, another one, Bailey Tykadamatri. We've just sold his younger brother to Man City. His 15-year-old brother has gone there for $1.5 million, which he was certainly lighting things up down there. So he was on loan at Lincoln, didn't really work. I think he picked up an injury as well over there. I think Lincoln had quite a few strikers, and he couldn't quite break into and keep that first team position down, which is a bit of a shame, because you'd like to think that players that go out on loan will come back better players. But I thought the season prior to that, I thought he did all right. I thought he did well for us. He is a Championship goal scorer. Nobody can take that away from him. And I think, yes, he'll be given opportunities this time around, because, again, as I've alluded to many times already while speaking to you, we haven't got many other options. The other one, obviously, Jamal Lowe, I think, whilst he has been being played in that kind of forward position last season, had the number 9 shirt as well, by the way, I'd prefer to see him out wide. Whenever I've seen him in other, throughout his career, he has been coming from a wider position. So the fact that 2 of his wide players might be leaving, we might be able to see him out there somewhat. But yeah, again, another one that I was excited when we signed him, but didn't. He was a little bit underwhelming, got to admit.
Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of normally on these podcasts, James, I ask about expectations for the season, but I think you've got to address this relative to the situation of the club. And I think that for most Wednesdayites, the concern is, can we actually pay our staff and stabilise the club off the field? And almost like if you got the best possible owners in over the next in the coming months, and the club went back down to League One, I think most Wednesdayites would take that, whereas I don't think many Wednesdayites could take much more of Dave Fonchanseri being the club's owner.
No, yeah, expectations are relegation. That is absolutely nailed on. Yeah, I mean, it would be an absolute miracle. And obviously miracles have happened at Sheffield Wednesday over recent years, but it would be a miracle if we stayed up. I think namely because two of the clubs that have come up in Birmingham and Wrexham probably not going to be down there. And I'm not, I think Birmingham could probably going to be doing okay, like props up near the top 6. Wrexham probably mid-table, maybe Charlton as well. They've got new owners, so they might be doing okay. So you're looking at certainly 2 championship clubs, and by championship I mean championship last season clubs that are going to get relegated, and maybe even 3 of them, and so that is the worry, that we've got to be better than 3 of the clubs that we came up against last season, which I don't know if we're going to be, because we are, the squad is worse than last time around, and yeah, we could get new owners in, this could go through, maybe before the start of the season, maybe just after. But then you get into January and we could already be cut adrift at the bottom. It's likely that we're going to get points deductions because we're already in the 3 transfer fee ban, which you get for 30 days of defaulting payments. We've already done another 30 days and we're now, 11 days into the next one. Plus the HMRC gets tagged onto that as well. And the next punishment is a disciplinary committee. So that'll be happening at some point, I'm sure. So we're going to be starting on minus. Now, when Danny Röhl came in, we were 7 points adrift at the bottom of the league. All right, that was after 11 games of the season. We managed to stay up on the last game of the season. So, point I'm getting at here is if it's anything around 7, 8, 9, maybe even 12 points deducted, could even be more. You never know. It's going to be a very, very tall order, and I don't think it's one that we can overcome. So, yeah, I think you're right. New owners. It happened to Birmingham. They got new owners. They got relegated. Look where they are now. If we could do the same as them, I'm not saying it would happen, but you never know. I think, you'd be stupid not to take that, to be honest.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's got to be the focus, new ownership and the right people at the helm. Because I think that this is, just on a final note, like the potential of Sheffield Wednesday is absolutely enormous. The core fan base is huge and they've suffered so much and tolerated so much over the last 20, 30 years and still, gone out in your numbers. So I really do think that if you give Wednesday out something to really grab onto, you can build something special, but it needs new ownership.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it's the untapped potential of Sheffield Wednesday. Yes, the stadium needs a bit of work doing to it. Yes, the training ground is probably not fit for purpose at times. So, but it's things that new owners can change, and that would obviously add to the when you're talking about assets and things like that, that would add to it. We're not maxed out on those sorts of things. There's loads of commercial opportunities that new owners can tap into, and we as a fan base will buy anything. We put out a new I mean, this is kind of a negative towards Chancery, but we announced a 3rd shirt for this season. Nobody's seen it. All it's going to have is the old badge, the old Wednesday badge on it. People bought it without even knowing what it's going to look like. They had a week to buy it. People went out there. I don't know the numbers that did, but everyone went mad for it. We've never seen it, and we actually might never ever see it, because that money is clearly gone that people have paid into. So this could be the mythical 3rd shirt, but we will buy things, and we are we're not exactly thriving at the moment either. So yeah, there is so much potential. Over 20,000 fans every single week, a fantastic away following. Pretty much sell out every single away game. I think the only one we don't do is Plymouth, but that's normally because it's on a Tuesday night. But yeah, the potential is definitely there. I hate using the term sleeping giant, but I think we are one of the very few sleeping giants that are left at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, James, it's been such a pleasure to get your insight on Sheffield Wednesday from the excellent Wednesday Till I Die podcast. Thanks to everyone for watching at home. You can subscribe to EFL Debate on YouTube and on Spotify if you want more of these summer deep dives, and we'll see you again very soon.